Afternoon to you. We're back here again. Right now it is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It is Thursday, February 26th. Kids are back from school. I got them on devices. They should be quiet for a while. I should have just enough time to get this in before I have to make them dinner. So, here we go again. And this time, we're on to the next installment of the Dresden Files. This is the 13th book in this series, entitled Ghost Story. I've been putting off the review on this one for a while, kind of as punishment for catching up on the book reviews that was piling up on my desk here. But let me tell you, it was great motivation for me to actually get the stuff done. And I'll tell you, like I've said before, these Dresden books are just a joy to read. The very first day I opened up this one, actually, I knocked out 100 pages like that. And it's a heavy book, though. One of the larger tomes. I think it might be the largest as of this writing. About 577 pages. So, again, more pages of Dresden, the better. So let's take a look at what's inside. Now, the last book was Changes. And on the internet, everyone loves Changes. They left us with quite the cliffhanger. Dresden finished up what he had to do. He saved his daughter. He's resting. He's on, the water beetle, recovering from his wounds. And he's basically shot and killed. It came out of left field. Like, what the hell? After all he's been through. He was on this boat. He's holding that duster that we see like in almost every cover of every book. And he's like shot to hell. Ripped to shreds. Bullet holes are through it, even though it's got magic to prevent that, but they got through it. As a garment itself, it was done. So with very little ceremony and a grand gesture, he kind of holds it over the boat into the waters of Lake Michigan and just lets it go. And it sinks to the bottom of the lake. It is Dunsky. Which is interesting because the whole book of Changes is aptly named everything that Harry Dresden knew was Dunsky. His own residence was burned down by the Eebs. His water beetle, the Blue Beetle, his Volkswagen car, was crushed beyond repair. His office building was destroyed by C4, which made the cops come after him. And now, the duster was gone too, so everything about Harry Dresden, the private detective, and practically immortal, was gone. And then to top it off, bang! There's a hole in his own chest. His blood is on the bulkhead. And he is going down. He falls into the lake himself, just like his duster. So that's what the last book left us off at. So then we pick up the next one here, and we start a new novel. And it starts immediately with Harry Dresden saying, "Dying's easy." We get him to have a coming to awareness moment, which, by the way, so are we as we're reading it. And Harry talks about being dead and how it doesn't quite feel so different, There's metaphors of, the light flashing before your eyes, of how temporary but yet permanent things are. There's a tunnel, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And while he's reminiscing on he's musing on these things, he gets yanked aside and literally yanked off of train tracks. Because the light at the end of that tunnel was indeed a train. And he was about to get run over. And Harry, who wasn't moving in his reverie, was just thinking it's just a metaphor coming at him. No, it was real for where he was. And who ends up yanking him off the tracks? Carmichael. Carmichael used to work with Karen Murphy in the Special Investigations Unit. And Harry dealt with Carmichael at a time or two. But he died back in the second book, in Full Moon. And in fact, he died trying to save Karen Murphy from a loop guru who was in the lockup of the precinct. Loop guru meaning a kind of werewolf. So now, Harry recognizes him. And it's like, wait a minute. Carmichael? God, I must be dead if I'm seeing you here. So Carmichael said, get in the car. We got to go back to the office. It's like, back to the office? What are you talking about? So they get in the car. They start driving through Chicagoland. And while Harry's kind of like looking out at the city, his city, on the way there, what he's seeing is like, it's familiar, but it's also not quite right. It's not his Chicago that he would claim. And Carmichael warns him, he's like, listen, don't go around the spirit Chicagoland a little too much, because there are things out there, and you don't want to deal with those kind of things. But they hurry up, they get to the office. It's a regular office-looking building in the downtown area. As he goes inside, Harry realizes there's literally like guardian angels guarding the building. What is going on here? They go inside, and someone gives Harry a mission. You see, the man in charge there, he happens to be Karen Murphy's father, the late Captain Colin L. Murphy. Colin L. Murphy. I'm sorry, Colin J. Murphy. I read that a little bit too fast in my notes. So Colin J. Murphy is the captain of the precinct in this spiritual Chicagoland. And he's like, listen, I got a mission for you. You're here now because you're kind of in transition. Because there's a predicament that you're in. And he tells them, there was an irregularity in how they killed you. And he uses phrases like, they cheated. So now, Harry has to get sent back to the world to find out who killed him. Because the fact that there was an irregularity is stopping Harry from either going uptown or downtown. And then he tacks on, oh, by the way, there's another reason to this as well. 3 of the people who you love will come to great harm unless you find your murderers. So basically, in a chapter or two, the stage is set. We know everything we need to know to get this one off the ground and brings us into the storyland. So, what is the story in this one? Well, Harry's going to be a ghost in Chicago. Hence, ghost story. It's Harry's story as a ghost. But being a ghost, he will not be able to use his magic. He won't be able to talk to anybody because he's a ghost. And that whole thing we've seen since the first book, about homes and houses having thresholds that, the supernatural can't just cross over or they'll be powerless. Well, now Harry is the supernatural. So those rules that he had even around his apartment will affect him in his new form. So this can get real interesting real quick. So being a ghost, Harry decides to go to see the only person he can think of off the top of his head. Mortimer Lindquist. We originally found out about Morty when Harry meets up with him way back in Grave Peril. He also made an appearance in Death Masks and Deadbeat as well. But he's not been included in the last 5 novels. Okay? Mortimer Lindquist is a medium. A psychic counselor, or a ghost whisperer, if you will. And who better to help out Harry in his now current spectral state? We get an interesting opening scene with Harry's meeting with Morty, because as Harry gets to his home, he sees it's actually guarded by other spirits who've aligned themselves with Morty. He's got a guard. And luckily for us, we get a little bit more rules of being a ghost added to us here. We even get to see something about bad ghosts, wraiths, maybe lemurs, and they exist in this world. And now, a ghost can defeat, say, another ghost. A ghost military man, let's say, can shoot a wraith with a ghostly gun. But it actually isn't firing like ghost bullets per se. It's actually firing pieces of the ghost out of, like, say, a gun. And by firing it, it can actually kill something like a wraith. And this becomes important. They give you more information. Ghosts are ghosts because they retain memories of their selves. In their true sense, their sense of self makes them intact. So that act of actually firing a projectile, let's say, it's actually a piece of the memory being fired out. And like a memory, when the carnage is over, they can actually go and retrieve the bullets and physically bring them back into their form to bring them back to like full, the memories they were before they fired the bullet are now reattached, let's say. And they even tell us how to define what a wraith might be. And they say wraiths are ghosts without purpose, without sufficient memories and self-reason. And what they end up doing is they devour the memories of the life of other shades. That's like they're calling vampirism, is just eating other memories. So then we learn that Harry, who's newly deceased, he still believes that he is Harry. And he's holding on tightly to that definition of self. And that gives him, like, say, his reason to exist. So therefore, a wraith would really want to devour the memories of, say, a Harry and bring them into itself. And by the way, when they do that, it kind of makes them a little bit more powerful, but probably more hungry too. So Harry kind of like is a shiny beacon of eat me in this spiritual realm. So Harry goes to Morty's place, and when he finally gets inside and he meets another ghost that helps him out, he starts to try to speak to Morty, and he does not want to help Harry. He's like, you ruin my life from time to time. You're horrible to be around. I'm not helping you at all. And right in the middle of this rejection, Morty's home is besieged. Dozens of wraiths, dozens upon dozens of wraiths come out and attack his home. Along with these half dozen or so lemurs who are more scary than the wraiths. Lemurs, by the way, unlike wraiths that are given into, like, say, despair, they're more given into rage and malice. So there's this huge onslaught against Morty's residence of many different spectral beings. And they all want Morty for some reason we do not yet know of. And by the way, when you're reading the pages about this fight in front of Morty's house, the attack is pretty cool. It really turns those pages like nothing else. And we learn a few things during it. One, we learn about who like the big baddie's going to be in the book. And he's out there trying to like get all the ghosts and the wraiths and the lemurs to attack. They term him the Gray Ghost. And at one point, this ghost was going to go kill one of the ghostly military men defending, who we learn is now called Sir Stewart. And Harry actually finds a way to attack the Gray Ghost. And he repels him just long enough for Sir Stewart to come around. And as Harry is pummeling the Gray Ghost shouts out, "Help me!" And Harry sees a floating skull behind it, one crackling with blue electric flame. And Harry realizes, that's Bob. But then the battle ends abruptly, and we don't get a chance to learn any more. But now we know, hey, Bob's out there somewhere, and helping someone bad. You know, we get to learn more about the spirit world. Part of this siege, besides having Rays and the Lemurs and the Grey Ghost and Bob, mortal men were helping to attack as well. And a person attempts to break into Morty's home. Now, while a person is doing that, he can cross a threshold. The other ghosts really can't do anything against them. It's going to be him versus Morty. And in the ensuing fight, we kind of learn at one point that Harry kind of like dives into Morty and is actually able to use like a spell, like a defending spell, while in there. But then Morty kind of casts him out, finds a way to invoke spirits around him, and all the spirits that get kind of like absorbed into Morty at that point, whatever they knew as far as like fighting tactics and what have you, now Morty knows. Because now their memories and their skills, he's kind of like becoming part of himself. So he finds a way to defend himself rather spectacularly through the entities that he asked to help him out. It's quite the scene, and gives you rather subtle exposition while it's giving you all these details. So, Harry eventually gets Morty to help him out. They head over to Karen Murphy's home because that would be the one place you want to go to first. And during this, Harry kind of learns that he's actually been away for 6 months, which to him only felt like a couple hours since he died. And here, we learn a lot of things have changed in the last 6 months. It turns out, by the way, all those attacks on Morty have been increasing in intensity over the past few weeks. And on top of that, something has been going down in this new supernatural world since the events at the climax of Changes. You see, somehow invoking that curse that Harry did at the end of Changes, he ended up killing the entirety of the Red Court of Vampires. They're all eliminated. And now, since then, something's been trying to take over the absent power base that the Red Court used to own. There have been supernatural abductions, murders, and just carnage and mayhem everywhere. So Karen found it necessary. She formed what she calls the Chicago Alliance, an organization composed of humans, practitioners, wizards, and others who defend Chicago against supernatural threats. It's got Karen. It's got Johnny Marcone, the mobster who actually signed the Unseelie Accords recently. The White Court of Vampires. The Alphas. Hell, even the youngest son of the Carpenter family, Daniel Carpenter. We even learn that Molly has undergone some kind of change too, and she's now referred to as the Ragged Lady. See, Molly was broken at the end of the carnage of Changes, both physically and mentally. She was shot in the leg, which she's still reeling from the effects of even now, 6 months later. And while she isn't as physically destroyed as her father, Michael Carpenter of the Knights of the Cross, or formerly, should I say, it's taken its toll on her. Plus, Molly, as well as Harry, was under that proverbial sword of Damocles from the White Council, because Molly had been a practitioner of black magic, a form of necromancy, which is, black magic is a no-no with the White Council. So, generally, the Wardens and the White Council have a license to kill any who go into necromancy and black magic. So, Harry had agreed to be her mentor. So while she was about to be killed, said, no, I will train her. She's not going to do that ever again. So if she ever fails and goes back to it, both she and Harry will be killed. Well, now that Harry, her mentor, has been killed, nothing's protecting her anymore. So she's got a price on her head. She's got a target on her back, however you want to say it. Because technically, no one is there to keep her from going down the dark path. So she's actually, besides being broken, is on the run constantly. Now, luckily, since the Red Court has been vanquished, the Wardens and the White Council have, shall we say, more pressing matters on their mind. Which doesn't mean that if they ever cross paths with Molly, they wouldn't just kill her. But they're not going after her right now. So she's been living on the streets. She's been making it seem that even though Harry Dresden may be dead, and believe me, there would be no way for that news not to get around in the circuit in Chicago. Even though he's gone, there is still a presence in Chicago. Don't mess with Chicago. So she'd be like a one-woman A-team, and she just cleans up the problems on the streets. Sometimes pretty harshly. And when she did, she would leave a scrap of her clothing behind. A rag from herself, which earned her the moniker, the Ragged Lady. Now, moving back. So then we get to an interesting, or maybe funny scene, depends how you look at it, where Harry needs Morty to tell Karen Murphy that he can see Harry. Let's just say, Karen, not so easily convinced. Because actually, herself doesn't think Harry's dead. She never saw a body. So she just has hope. And this guy comes in and say, hey, I can see him. She's like, boom, gunpoint, prove it. It gets to the point that Karen's like, listen, someone go out there, sends an alpha out there, sends Butters out there. Go find Molly. Go find the ragged lady. Bring her back in. She's the only one that can say if this is for real or not. Which they do. Molly has to use her wizard sight so she can see Harry. And that itself is enough that it just makes her cry. Again, it makes that sanity of Molly break just a little bit more. And even after all this, Karen's trying to level with Molly too. Trying to get her to come back. Hell, you're here now. Get a sandwich. Take a shower. Sleep in the bed. Do whatever you can. Just rest for a minute, but then slowly come back to us. You know, she's lost so much weight since she's been on the streets. She smells like the streets. And overall, she ain't looking too good. But we kind of get the sense that Molly and Karen have had this conversation before. It didn't end too well between the two of them. But at least the Chicago Alliance is now aware that Harry is there in a ghost form. And his mission of trying to find out who murdered him, that will make everyone kind of coalesce together and work together in a unified mission. But before they can do that, just then a drive-by shooting occurs. A group just comes and opens up on Karen's house. So Harry and Sir Stuart jump outside and see who's doing that, which for us is an interesting scene. Again, we get to see more of Harry now being a student, while Sir Stuart is being the teacher, mentoring him on how to act as a ghost. Tells him, hey, the car's going away, just think you're on it, and boom, you will zoom over there, you'll be on it. You don't have to run there, you don't have to jump on it, just boom, I'm on it. So, demonstrations. And we do see there actually are moments where a ghost can physically interact with an object in the real world. They can do things. And what he calls it is like taking the energy from something and using it against itself for something else. Kind of like Aikido, in a way. So Sir Stuart shows Harry that he can thrust a ghostly hand into the console of a moving car and kind of use its own energy to turn the steering wheel and make the car veer off and go into a snowbank. So it is possible that we get the ghosts can interact with the physical world if they're trained enough to do it. Now, this whole thing with the drive-by opens up an interesting subplot. I'm not going to say it's something of a page filler, because again, that sounds more negative connotations, and I'm not trying to malign the works of Jim Butcher at all. But this whole aspect opens up the world a little more, and we see an example of how the influences of other magical beings are in Chicagoland. Basically, there's a magical force. It's attempted to put together like a gang of street kids, whatever, in the city. The magical force has a name called Aristides, who when Harry sees him, just calls him Baldy. Basically, he's a low-level sorcerer. He has just enough magic in him to get the street kids to follow him. He's like Fagin in Oliver Twist. He has enough magic that if a gang kid doesn't follow him, he can manipulate enough pain in him to get them to come around and see his way and get in line, so to speak. He's the one that actually sent the drive-by out to Karen's place. It took me a while to remember or to find out why he did this, but it turns out it wasn't just to move the plot along. He did it because Karen is now leading, the Chicago Alliance, and he wanted to stop her from investigating the supernatural threats. Take out the head of the snake kind of a thing. So there's a premise to it which gets us into this part of the story. So the drive-by brings Harry into the situation. Now, one of the drive-by men, Fitz, becomes a victim of Baldy because he screwed up the drive-by. I wonder if I can say drive-by more in this part of the sentence. And because he kind of failed, he gets kind of cast aside and becomes more unimportant to Baldy. Demoted, in a way, if you will. And Harry sees this, and he kind of talks to him a little bit away. And kind of a sucks to be you comment is made. But when he says that, Fitz actually hears it. So now we have another way that Harry found someone who he can use to communicate with other people with. So he decides to help this guy. It's like, listen, you're not so bad. Do what I gotta do, and you can do what you gotta do. So Harry decides to try to help him out, get him out, so he can help Harry, and Harry will help him. So the one man he thinks to go to is that one priest, Father Forthill. And maybe Father Forthill might be able to help Harry as well. And then while he's there and they're trying to fix up, Fitz, give him food and something to rest, Forthill decides he has to get involved. And he does it his own way, in a priestly manner. And he decides, I'm going to go down, to this slum area and just talk with Aristides about the boy. Maybe he'll just see the light, because, I'm a priest. Which obviously gets him captured. So Harry has to gather a small force together, break into the gang's hideout, and then win the day. Like I said, it's a little bit of an aside for the story, but it does do a few things for us. Okay, number one, during this, we learn that as a spirit, Harry needs to find shelter. In fact, he actually goes and hides in an open grave in a nearby cemetery. And it's actually an open grave that we've known about. It was dug and bought as a taunt to him by an old enemy, Bianca St. Clair of the Red Court, going all the way back to Grave Peril, Book 3. You see, we learn that daylight kind of displaces the energies of ghosts, so they must find shelter. And we know that now. Number two, we get to see Molly's brother Daniel take a role in the story, kind of for the first time. Like I said, he's actually part of the Chicago Alliance, and we see him fighting toward the climax of this little interlude. And, well, he's kind of a kick-ass fighter, too. Very adept at knife fighting. Even when he's fighting Aristides, who has the magic of, I guess they call it, it's a kinetic mancy. Kinetomancy, whatever. It enhances his speed. But Daniel holds his own, and then some. So we have to see, this guy's got some fight in him. And I think there's a subplot in here, very briefly, where he's hoping to get his father's sword of the cross, Amoricus, for himself. The problem is, you can't just want it. You gotta earn it. Karen's got it. So I think he's been training to one day get it, but he wants it, gets it. So it's a little difficult. He doesn't have it yet. I don't think it's it at all. I just say he doesn't have it at this point. Number three, during this we actually get a little bit of that mortician, now kind of the group's medic, Waldo Butters. Butters has evolved a bit since we last saw him. They haven't done much with his polka aspect of him for a few books now, especially since Harry's no longer a private eye and going to the morgue to look at the corpse to get a clue for a case he's on. Harry's a warden. He actually does frontline battles and such, so there's no cases of that nature any longer. So therefore, Butters not just with the dead people, listening to his music and enjoying his life as is. But by now, in the last 6 months, Waldo is actually safeguarding Bob the Skull. And Waldo's getting a lot more involved in the magical lore that is Harry's world. So like I said, this whole section of the book, it serves its purpose in moving things along. And gives us more and more lore of people as they evolve. Oh, and I had to add one thing in this conversation. There's a very interesting scene at one point here. So Father Forthill's captured. He's kind of in a cell or in a room, whatever you want to call it. He's been beaten. He's been tortured. So Harry has a ghost trying to find out where he is, so when he leaves the group to go find him, they know where to go look for him. he gets in to where he's been kept, and he senses a presence in the room. And when he looks around, he actually finds out there's like an angel of death hovering over him. So, Harry has his little way with words and practically threatens this angel. Do not kill this man, or you have a problem with me. And the angel merely responds, his life or his death is not in my hands. I'm merely there to usher the spirit into the afterlife. And they have this great back and forth, and the spirit is like, listen, Father Fordhill's been fighting darkness for the majority of his adult life. There are some who would see that his soul ends up tortured by the Prince of Darkness. This angel of death is merely there to see him safely on to the next world, to assist him with his transition. Again, really cool scene. I just wanted to highlight this for you, because it is that cool. For my book, it takes place on page 393 of chapter 37, if you want to go back and revisit it yourself. Now, for the moment, I'm going to take another little side trip for you. I'm going to fill in one more thing that's a pocket of information in this novel. So Molly's been doing her whole ragged lady thing, like I mentioned. Harry's dead, magical void in the world from the Red Court vampires being destroyed. Everyone's trying to, nature abhors a vacuum. They're trying to fill that hole. And all the magical nasties are coming out of the woodwork. Wardens are stretched around the globe. They're not coming to Chicago. They're not replacing Harry as a warden there either. So Molly's doing her little vigilante, Punisher-esque outing in the streets to get anything and everything that might even attempt to make an incursion in the city. Her city. It's an entire, taking on the mantle of the Batman once the Batman moves on kind of thing. And as she eliminates a threat, leaves behind a scrap of clothing, a rag, her calling card. But she hasn't been alone with this, per se. Turns out, Harry's godmother, his fairy godmother, the Liandashi, has been keeping an eye on her. Training her. Been doing it in the classic Winter Fae / she manner, which is keep getting her attacked. Attack her, attack her, attack her. She has to learn to use her magic in life-threatening ways. Can't just teach her how to do something. It won't really work. In fact, there's a little aside even during this where Harry remembers when he was real young under De Mornay, and he was trying to learn some fire magic then. He wasn't really doing it, but then he leaves and escapes, and then some other entity or presence makes his way to him, and he kind of does his first, fireball, fuego, and manages to defeat this thing. So we kind of in backfilling Molly's training, we further backfill Harry's training, how it kind of is similar. And then in one of the scenes with Harry's there, just talking to Leah, because she can see him no problem. We get to see Molly in action. There's some other beasties out there called the Fomor. They're mainly described as, and I gotta read this, exiles from myth and legend, the outcasts of the gods and demons of every land bordering the sea. Defeated giants, fallen gods, dark reflections of beings of light. There are many races and none joined together beneath the banner of the Fomor in a common cause. And actually it says that Liandashi says that they were once the enemies of her people, actually both winter and summer courts, and that she banished them into the sea. So they're actually in Chicago trying to do their own thing, and Molly's fighting them back. So Liandashi actually gets them to chase Molly at one point as part of her training, but she doesn't know that. And Harry gets to see her ability to veil, which she always was adept at, but it got even better. She can create multiple images of herself, fighting in different directions, so no one knows which is the real her, while she hides, because she doesn't have offensive spells too much. She has defensive. Harry gets to see her use her glamour on vast scales that she wasn't really able to do before. This girl's working at a level that she did not have before Harry's death. And while some of this isn't that important to this book, except for being cool and you get to see what's happened in 6 months since Harry died, but the whole training, the mentorship, or whatever you want to call it, is really important for the next book. So, the surprise ending of this book here is what tipped her mental attitude over the edge just enough to get her into this state. And this, can we call it a partnership with the she? Probably not. But I'm going to use it anyway for the sake of this dialogue. This partnership with Leanda She is just very important. But it's showing that she can actually hold her own. It's why she's been able to do what she's been doing for the past months. So, end of second aside. 36 minutes already. So now to push this review along, Harry finds out that Morty has been kidnapped by the Grey Ghost. He goes back to his house. House is burning. Spirits all around the yard. And after going through investigating steps, he finds out where he's been taken to. So we get action, exposition, cool scenes later. We kind of learn that the Grey Ghost is actually the Corpse Taker. We can remember the Corpse Taker from back in the 7th novel, Deadbeat. He was one of the necromancers who were followers of Kemmler. And they were all fighting to get the Word of Kemmler, a kind of how-to book on how to use the Dark Hallow of like the most evilish of necromancy spells. Which would even have them wield power over the Black Court of Vampires, too. It was also in that book that we were reading that we learned about Bob the Skull and his history. Because he used to work with Kemmler for a while back. And DRESDEN asked him about that time, and if he could do anything that can help him in their current situation. But Bob refused to access that part of his memory. He says, I locked it up in there intentionally, so it can't be accessed. So, DRESDEN kind of forces it out of him, and Bob goes schizophrenic. And the other side of his essence comes out with these memories of being like a Kemmler disciple, kind of, and almost kills DRESDEN. After which, he kind of orders Bob to never again access that side of himself. At which point, it kind of split off from Bob. And we find it later on. So, the Corpse Taker wants Mortimer. And that's why he's been besieging his home these past bunch of weeks. And I'm going to fast forward a touch and be like, listen, Harry's got this brilliant idea. He's going to round up all those stray souls around Morty's place and get them to help him onslaught and barrage the Corpse Taker and then kind of take him off the board. Unfortunately, the Corpse Taker's hideaway is vastly warded. So they have to actually come close to the lair. This is the whole plan. Let's get close to the lair, jump to the Never Never, pass the wards, jump back to Chicago, finish the job. Well, when they do this, they get close to the lair, pop over to the Never Never, only to find this place is a freaking fortress. Literally, that side of the Never Never is barricaded like D-Day of Normandy. They've got to literally storm the beach to get past where the wards are. Now, for us, the reader, this is quite the battle that goes on at the moment. It's literally an invasion in the Never Never. Never Never Faye, defending the dividing line between the wards in Chicago, and all the ghosts and spirits with Harry trying to bust through. It's certainly a hell of a read for us that are holding the book. We actually get a pretty interesting piece of information here. They touch on it earlier in the book, but here it means more. Where, if Harry keeps trying to use his magic, like even in spectral forms, he's kind of learning how to a little bit, it's almost like firing those spirit bullets out of his body. It drains him. It drains his essence. And the more he uses his life essence, the lesser of a ghost he becomes. And I don't mean he becomes mortal. He's almost in danger of turning into a mindless wraith if he keeps pushing it. And this actually culminates, they kind of break through a little bit, and right before they're about to like cross the bridge that will get them to where they need to get to just plop back into Chicago, he's now confronted in a showdown with Evil Bob. Remember before, he found Bob the Skull with the Grey Ghost at one of Mortimer's battles in front of his house. It wasn't Bob. It was Evil Bob. It was this part of him with Kemmler that with the schizophrenic split was actually separated from Bob the Skull. So there's two Bob the Skulls out there. We'll call them Good Bob and Evil Bob. Evil Bob is helping the Corpse Taker. They're both necromancy-ish enough together. So Evil Bob is the one that set up this whole D-Day invasion area in the Never Never and has been waiting for Harry. And while they're fighting, Evil Bob is just wiping the floor with Harry. And I'll leave it there to keep away the spoilers. But, obviously, Harry and his remaining forces find a way to get past him, past the rest of the D-Day defenses, come to the Chicago side of the Never Never. And they have to break down the physical manifestations of the wards so that everything can come down and the Chicago Alliance can come through. However, as they're succeeding in this, the Corpse Taker actually takes a turn and he smashes the remaining wards himself. Why would he do that? Well, unbeknownst to Harry, this is all part of his plan. It's what he wanted to do. So this whole charge of the Light Brigade that Harry's been leading into the Mortimer-friendly spirits, it was all in the cards. You see, there's kind of a reason why he's called the Corpse Taker. He can siphon souls. So he essentially vacuum sucks all the life energies of all the spirits that are with Harry. And having all those as part of his energy now, he actually has the ability to turn to flesh and physically manifest. And now he can do this whole body switching thing that he's been known for. Which was the goal to begin with. Get Mortimer Linquist, who could talk to spirits. Take him over. Get more spirits to you, get more power. It's a never-ending cycle. Then, the prolonged fight ensues, which I'm not going to get into too much. And Molly and Mortimer and Butters, I mean, it's just chock full of it for us readers. You know, at this point, Harry's used up the majority of his energy. He's a disembodied spirit, almost floating listlessly. Corpse Taker's getting the upper hand. But as the Corpse Taker sees victory almost at hand, the arena shifts. Now the battle's taking place within Molly's mind. She's conducting a psychic battle against the Corpse Taker's attempts to take her over. It's very descriptive, and we follow it as best as we can. Let's say at one point, Molly's holed up in her head at a place where she's actually doing the whole battle of her mind on the deck of the original Starship Enterprise. And Molly plays every single role of all the people on the Enterprise as she orchestrates the battle within her mind from the captain's chair. And during this, we get the big reveal. Again, I'll try to pull back from the spoilers as much as I possibly can, but we get to find out who shot Harry at the end of Changes, the last novel. We get to see what decision was made to get you there, what Molly's role in all this was, and why Harry's death had affected her as much as it did, which led her into the descent of the Ragged Lady. But what I will say is, it turns out there was actually another entity at play during this whole plan. And what the cosmic scales say is that Harry was lied to. And those lies took away his free will, his ability to choose. The decision was no longer his own. And that's the reason why he floated as a ghost the whole time in this book. Remember what I said at the beginning. Carrie Murphy's father. Harry's in this predicament because there was an irregularity in how they killed him. They cheated. And Harry has to find out who killed him, because the irregularity is preventing Harry from going either uptown or downtown. So it finally comes full circle. Oh, and by the way, when Captain Murphy told him 3 of the people you love will come to great harm unless you find your murderers, yeah, that happened to be a lie too. So Harry just got it coming and going. Now, we know there's more books in the series. In fact, the latest one, 12 Months, was just released last month. So it should be no surprise to find out that Harry's body is actually still alive. He gets to re-merge with it. We found out it's been in a dark place underneath Demon Reach. And the island itself has been keeping his body alive with vine-like intravenous nourishment from the island itself. We also find that Harry's head is being cradled by the Queen of Air and Darkness herself, Queen Mab. So it looks like trying to get killed doesn't allow Harry to escape from being the Winter Knight, a mantle he swore he would take onto himself to be able to walk again, to be able to rescue Margaret Angelica DRESDEN, his daughter Maggie. End scene. Now, after I've said all that now for 46 minutes, what am I to think about this one? Well, I did love how Jim Butcher got to open the doors for us and give us even more of that world building that surrounds ghosts in the Dresden universe. We may have had some encounters with ghosts before, but now we actually get to see how some of those rules work. It's important to have rules for us from time to time. You know, it lets us know the limitations and the framework that we're going to build within, and we can see, like, even allies or enemies, what should they be able to do and what should they not be able to do. And if you play them down there, you lay them down, you write them down, it's a better arena to see Jim Butcher play around inside. You know, we got to see about the thresholds from this side of the equation, how the sunlight works on things like ghosts, how memories keep ghosts alive. And it was interesting in all the different ways that Jim Butcher came up with that someone could actually communicate with the ghost of Harry in the book. I mean, it starts out very simply. Let's have Mortimer, a character that we already knew about from past books, and we get to utilize him. And it wasn't just some new character who had the power we needed at the time we needed it. Although, he did have a new character with the power we needed. And that was with the gang member, Fitz, who could just hear him. Molly was able to see him using her wizard sight. Again, later on, Molly was able to use some kind of tuning fork gizmo that she would use, and they could have conversations then too. Butters had some makeshift Bob's skull on a flashlight thing, and got to use that every now and again as well. And then the Liandashi, who, as Faye, can just see him. So it got us around a few corners, and we were able to keep Harry directly involved in the story, without using Ouija boards or a consult the bones kind of character or scene. And it let him give his banter directly back and forth with people as well, which is always fun for us. On top of that, it was the perfect in-between book that we needed at this time. Now, Jim Butcher had to bridge the gap between Harry being shot and killed and from the finale of the last story, and where the story needs to go next. And I'm going to use a couple examples of why that interim transition story is important to get to the next chapter after that. And while I tell this, I have to pre-emphasize something. The two examples I'm going to give you right now are just examples of transition. The examples are negative, but Ghost Story is not negative. So the examples aren't saying, and therefore Ghost Story is that bad. The transition story is just what we need, and we've seen it tons of times. But here's my two examples. My first example, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was imprisoned for 3 years of a 6-year sentence. And when he came back, everyone expected him to just be a beast in the ring. You know, I mean, all he had to do was work out for 3 years straight. Whether in his cell, in the yard, you name it. And no one's going to screw with him in prison. So when he comes out of prison, everyone's looking forward to what's his first fight going to be. And who does he draw? Peter McNeely. A nobody. And no one thought that this fight was going to amount to anything. Okay? And while Iron Mike had his share of opening second knockouts before, this pale loser danced around for 89 seconds. I mean, the fight was worse than a joke. I mean, hell, even Pizza Hut did a commercial for stuffed crust pizza, and they had him turn the pizza around to bite the back, and the pizza hits him on the cheek and knocks him out flat. I mean, just ridiculousness. But then again, who wants to be the first person to fight Mike Tyson once he got out of his cell for 3 years? No one. And it was probably a payday for him as well, but still, no one wanted to be the first one. Because hype. Everyone was looking forward to it. Everyone wanted to see it. You throw, a mook out there, let him get the crap beat out of him, now doing a real fight after that. So, that's my first example. Secondly, my example is Howard Stern. Howard Stern, the king of all media. He's pretty much on air for about 3 decades. And then after that, whatever the reasons are, doesn't matter, he left and went to Sirius XM. But now CBS Radio had to figure out who's going to fill that slot. Because now after so many years, the expectations of whoever filled that slot were so high, anyone would have failed to succeed following him up. So who did they get for the fall guy? David Lee Roth. David Lee Roth's show lasted for 4 months before cancellation. And therefore, at the time, the bullet was taken. Opie and Anthony followed up after that, and they killed it for a while, especially in New York thereafter. So you need that one transition to get from some expectations to something else. Now, like I said, both examples are simply examples of transition. Ghost Story had none of those failures for the examples, but it was a transition from changes to what comes after. Because we did know that he picked up the mantle of the Winter Knight in changes, but to go right into the Winter Court immediately might have been too much. And after the victory, to go into what's going to probably be horrible as far as like for him, for Harry, you need some buffer in between. And I think Ghost Story does a great job of doing that. Another thing this book does, we got to see how the world moved along in the 6 months after his death, and how it affected every one of that cadre of compatriots. Each had to grieve and make do in their own way. And for about all of them, they didn't make do very well. I mean, you could say Butters might have had a positive arc in a way, but it's possible that some of his innocence of not knowing, in the way that he didn't know when he was simply and happily a mortician, has been taken away. He's now in the Alliance. He knows what's going on. But mainly, Molly, while learning new magic, isn't faring very well. Again, physically and mentally. Karen Murphy, still a wreck. Even though she's working out with Vikings, she's distanced. She's separated. She's grieving. And she can't believe he's dead and thinks that he's not, but still the uncertainty is killing her. Chicago itself has turned into a battleground. Thomas Wraith is kind of his own little purgatory now. His half-brother is dead. Justine's doing her best to keep him here as much as she can, but it's not been easy. I mean, it's just been a shit show for most of the people. Me? Hell, you should know by now. I'm basically all in. For me, more Dresden is good Dresden. But let me wrap up this one here, though. I actually just finished the next book here, Cold Days, 2 days ago. So I need to get those notes down and come right back to this chair and talk to you about that one soon as well. But better news for me is this one right here with Ghost Story. In this video, I basically caught up on my backlog of all the books I have read that I want to tell you about. So that was an accomplishment for me on this little pile of stuff I have on my desk right to my left. So, on that note, I want you all to enjoy yourselves. If you've gotten this far, thank you very much. Little banner right here. Throw a subscription on the channel if you could. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you very much. It'd be free to you. It means a lot to me. In the meantime, cheers. I'll see you back here as soon as I can get here. Take care now.